Welcome to Psychic Evolution with evidential psychic medium Jamie Clark and spiritual coach and healer Maggie Clark.
Welcome back to another episode of Psychic Evolution. I'm Jamie Clark.
And I'm Maggie Clark, and this is a podcast where you discover the psychic potential within to empower yourself and manifest your psychic and mediumship gifts.
And these abilities are so natural, they're supernatural. Exactly. Everyone is a psychic medium, as we always share. And we just want to do the best we can to give you the tools and techniques that work for us and that we work with so that it might be able to help you and be of service in some way. 1, question everything. 2, put these tools and techniques to use and see how they vibe with you. Because once you start working with these and you get into the physical senses and the metaphysical senses, you'll begin to find a little bit more balance on the inner reality and the outer as we kind of see it. And today we want to get into some of the clairs that we work with, like the physical senses. We have the metaphysical senses. And we just want to give you a few tips and techniques to work with this so that you can bring yourself up to speed, so to speak, to get that physical, metaphysical connection. So that as we read energy, you have even more modalities to pick up information, different ways to read that information.
And as we're kicking off season 6, we really want to explore some of the basics that we go back to. We haven't even covered clairtangency, clairgustance, clairalience in any detail since season 1 when we introduced that. In today's episode, we are going to talk about skin vision. This is known as clairtangency. It's one of your metaphysical clairs. It's not talked about too often because it's not usually people's strongest clair. But today we want to give you some tips and techniques on how you can improve this skin vision, this clairtangency, the ability to feel things metaphysically. And then also, in addition, we're going to bring in a little bit of working with psychometry as another way to develop your skin vision. So let's have fun with this episode in your psychic evolution.
The clairtangency, or as I call it, skin vision, is the ability to mentally imagine yourself touching different objects and feeling the texture, the solidness or softness or whatever the qualities are with that object, so that as you see physically and metaphysically that information, you'll be able to go multidimensional and read energy even more effectively, which also will tie into some of the keys of success with the ability to feel an object, or psychometry, which is the ability to hold an object and get vibrational patterns of information about that object or people that it's connected to, or many other different facets to that. And the job for me is to use all of my clairs the best that I can. So when I'm doing readings with people, if I'm doing mediumship, I always say that no one's the same physically. They're not going to be the same metaphysically. I need to have as many versatile tools and techniques, in this case the clairs, to make that communication more effective and consistent.
So when we think about skin vision, imagine opening up the palm of your hand. And as you open it, ask your higher self or your master guide to place something in your hand, whatever it might be. See if you can feel what that is. These are ways that we can start working with our guides and working with skin vision to help us amplify the sensations, the psychic sensations that we feel as we're working with these clairs. Now, clairtangency is the ability to actually feel something that's not there, yet you feel it on an energy level rippling over your skin. Sometimes it feels like it actually touches your physical skin. So we want to be really open when we're working with this. So yeah, we can ask our higher self to put something in our hand and try to figure it out, or we could work with it even another way and say, hey, higher self, I would like you to put a smooth polished stone in my hand. Let me see what that feels like energetically. And then you can move on to other textures. Pour water over my hand, put fire in my hand, right? Put a bark of the skin, like rub that over my hand. What does the skin of a snake feel like? Or what does the fur of a dog feel like? And see if your higher self or master guide, depending on who you're working with, for the sake of this exercise, we're just going to use Master Guide and go from there from here on out. But realize that could be your higher self or a different guide you might be working with. But really, just ask for what you want. There is always a way to work with your senses in new ways. And so when we're asking for help from our master guide, we're literally asking to be trained by the part of this guide that's part spirit and that can interact with us in this physical world. And close your eyes, see what sensations you feel on your hand as you're asking for certain things to be placed in the palm of your hand.
And always in this capacity, would the elements only use the inner space aspect of fire in your hands. Don't literally do that. Funny, but I always make sure that we go, no, yeah, but here's the thing. Because what Mag is sharing is the ability to tune into our guides as well with that information of communication. Now, not only that, not everyone is able to instantly feel what the textures are of some object that might be mentally placed in our energy. And my thing is, well, good, but let's practice in our day-to-day living. And what I mean by that is for the clairtangency or the skin vision, how does it feel to touch water on your hand? Then either go to a pond, a glass, a bowl, and put your hand in the water, feel how it feels on your skin, and pull it away, and then recall how that feels to be on your skin. Because for me, those who know me know that I share the fact that for many years I would wake up, light the candles, turn on the music, do meditations for about 30 minutes, and after that I was psychically on. And after many years, I asked Chi, I'm like, Chi, is there, my master guide, is there anything I can do to help me speed this up? Because I feel like I'm working from the time I get up. And he said, well, yeah, Jamie, you know how when you get up, you light the candles, turn on the music, do your meditations, and then you're psychically on? I said, yes. He's like, okay, once you've done all of those steps and you're now psychically on, entrain how it feels to be psychically on and create a white button in your mind. And for me, now I push that white button, I went from 30 minutes to 30 seconds, both getting the same end result of effectiveness in my psychic abilities. That is another dynamic that I want you to do, is to work with the ability to entrain how it feels with that particular object, like physically grasp whatever object it is or a texture or any of those. Rub that on your hand or in any way, and then take your hand away. And I want you to imagine yourself touching that as well without physically touching it. Imagine yourself metaphysically touching that object and see if you might get a sensation in your hands or in wherever you would like to connect it with. Because sometimes you need that tactile sense to go, okay, this is a physical reality, so I can do that. This mental stuff isn't so easy, so I don't know if I'm just making stuff up. My thing is do it enough physically so that you realize metaphysically when you're recalling that vibe of information, you're not making it up, you're recalling a real vibe of information. That for me is the practicality into my Solodex as an eternal being, because I am always building on tools and techniques and information and insights along the way in order to make it more effective for me. That's all I can do is for myself, but make it effective for me. And I am always working on my different clairs a lot of the time, because that way when I'm having fun, I keep it fun and enjoy. I don't try to put it as work, because then you're not having fun and then it can shift the energy. But for me, in having fun and doing it on a day-to-day basis, I'm in that energy so much, it's easier for me to go, oh, I can grab an object of psychometry and I'm holding the object, and I might get pieces of information, or I might get some texture that this object was up against or touching that the average person like, well, there was nothing. And really there was a nice, steel wall right there that it was leaning up against. And I had no idea except that I could feel something steel. And yet this object was something else. It was a stone. So then you'll be able to get the different vibrations of energy to go, it could have been wood, it could have been aluminum, whatever, but it was steel. And that kind of a vibe for me, I know how steel, the solidness of that vibration feels to my cellular structure, to my skin. So when I will physically touch something that's steel or metal in this case, depending on what I'm wanting to vibe with, whether it's copper, steel, brass, whatever the case is, gold, I'm now getting that molecular structure, that exact vibration of the gold or whatever stone or object I'm wanting to connect with. Because now anything that I've touched, I've got the metaphysical vibration of how it feels to touch that object. So if I'm psychometry connecting with an object, it will also bring up some of the other clairs that I've been working with in my own time that can give me more information beyond what that one texture was that I was picking up.
So you're doing a psychometry read, you're holding a stone in your hand, and you're basically reading into what's around that stone by
Yes.
what you feel in your hand as steel or metal or whatever the case might be.
Exactly. And
Okay.
not only that, we can also get the information as, when we were standing there, we had a person give me a ring and they wanted to see if I could psychometry read that ring and get any information. And as I was holding it, I started getting insight information psychically that the ring that I was given to hold and read was actually connected to multiple people, not just one person. Because it could have been anything. But I'm like, I feel like this has been connected to multiple people, not just one. And it was validated that apparently that ring was connected to multiple people and not just one. I had no idea, except that I felt that energy of what I felt was connected. So not only did that give me physical connections, in this case with the metal, if that were the case resting up, but the metaphysical, this is people, humans that are living, or at least that were alive in connection with that ring. So now we're starting to see you can get a lot of different clairaudient, clairvoyant, clairtangency, all the clairs that the more you work with it in a conscious way, like I'm physically awake, the more metaphysically you'll have that Rolodex of information to pull from. Like, oh, I'm holding this rock, but it's weird because I feel like there's a lot of water coming in my hands. And the person might be like, well, we found that at the bottom of the river. And you'd be like, oh, wow, because I had no clue. It could have been sitting on the shore or not even near water. But for some reason, I picked up water in connection with that. Why? Because vibrations are consistent. Unless you change them, it will vibrate the same way, water or happiness or, whatever the case is. You'll be able to have that Rolodex of information with many, many different textures. If it's the clairtangency, the ability to physically or skin vision, or the clairaudient or the clairvoyant or many other clairs, I want you to be able to work with this on a day-to-day basis. And when you can do that comfortably, start off with the little things. Try not to go for the big major things because as you're starting to work with it, you may not have a lot of security to go, yeah, I can do this effectively. You'd be like, I hope it's working and I don't have a clue. Like, nope, start with your strongest abilities and work with those. And then on your off time, so to speak, work with the other abilities that you might need to improve or get a stronger connection with.
I think psychometry reads are really amazing to work with this type of clairtangency because you always seem to feel things differently when you're holding something or when you're focused on the palm of your hand. I always imagine, when we're little kids and we're running around touching everything and we're like, don't touch that, don't touch that. Well, we're like, no, touch everything. Get back into the understanding that you can improve your psychic skills through the physical touching of things so that later on, the metaphysical that comes through even more clearly. And that's interesting. What is some really cool experiences, whether it was psychometry or something where your skin vision lit up and gave you a piece of information that was really transformational for someone during a reading?
Well, there's quite a few, but one of them were many years ago where I was psychometrying an object and I started picking up characteristics about a person that was connected apparently to the object I was holding. And I started getting not only the characteristics or personality traits of the person, but I started to get physical traits of what they were physically dealing with, health issues. Not only that, I was able to get the information. They were like, yep, that's exactly what's happening. Plus, I was able to add a layer of information in each way I was reading the energy. Because for me, I've done it long enough to where I've got parameters around this that if I want to target something or grab something as psychometry, I can take one layer, go, is this connected to a person? Is this connected to what kind of reality was around it? Was there rocks? Was it nature? Was it held in a safe? Whatever the case is, it will hold on that object. And the ability that I was very accurate with apparently where this had been placed, not only connected to the person and the characteristics, but the place that it was at for many years, that there's no way I knew that. Yet it was very accurate that they were like, that's exactly right. And it kind of validated a lot of the information about what they were experiencing in connection with this person, that they weren't really sure, but they were questioning. And then giving enough accuracy to go, yeah, but I'm Joe Schmo. I don't know nothing about you, yet I might know things about you. And that became very validating for them, because once I was able to be accurate enough to go, that's either really good guesswork or something to that, it gave them a security to know, okay, this guy doesn't even know us or the object or anything, yet he's picking up a lot of that information. It became an ability to layer that pieces of information, personalities and circumstances, dynamics, all of those, that layer by layer, I was accurate with that information. So it opened them up to go, what else do you got?
And how did it show up through skin vision? Was it like a sensation or like an object or something that really caught your attention?
It was a combination of both. And depending on what the object is, for one of those, it was a gun. And I was vibing the gun in this case. And I started picking up some information about the people who were connected to the gun. And not only the people, but a particular circumstance that was connected to that particular person with that particular object, in this case, the gun. And it was in a way that what I was picking up is the person was having trouble loading the gun, and that they had no idea what was going on. And it turned out that the person was in a hunting and they had an animal coming toward them, and they couldn't get that in until the last moment. And then when they did, they adjusted the animal, neutralized it, basically.
How did that show up in skin vision? Did you like feel a sensation?
I was also getting the object, the gun, but also in a way where the person was standing. They were by a tree, and I could feel the roughness of the bark. Not every tree has roughness. Some of them, aspens, I believe, are smooth or whatever the case is. But in that, you get enough of those tactile senses, it can literally create a whole vision for you to pick up on information.
So part of the skin vision worked with, of course, when we're working with our psychic evolution, we have all of these metaphysical senses working together, usually at the same time. But skin vision wise, you were able to feel the bark of a tree. So you knew you were in the woods.
Yep. In this case. Otherwise, it could have been, because I could be touching a tree, but it could have been in the person's backyard. It could have been, whatever the case is. But enough of that energy that I was seeing in my mind sight, this person was out in nature, not in the backyard, just like Mag is saying, but in nature, and there was a tree there. Plus the information that was connected to that with this particular person. Because on average, if you have a gun, more than likely you feel like, no, it's pretty solid, you're safe. And in this case, I was picking up a freaked outness, so to speak, to go in connection with this gun because I'm holding this gun. And when they gave me the information afterwards, after I'd shared things, then it was more validating. Well, I had no idea, but this is what I was picking up in this, aspect. And a lot of times they were like, well, yeah, but this is what happened. That's why you might be feeling that. So it now gave me a reference through skin vision in this case, plus the energy of what's around that gun, who was connected to that object, in this case, the gun. And, oh yeah, circumstances and experiences beyond just the person. It was this person had the gun, but they were apparently in some way having trouble trying to get that clip in until the last moment. And just as they did, they were able to make the adjustment and save their own life. But it could have been a whole different story. It could have been anything. But I was like, I have blind faith. I don't have to understand it. I don't mean to be rude, but here's what I'm getting or here's what I'm being made to feel. It's always just information. I don't try to put it in my frame of reference because I've learned for me, if I'm giving information, it's not about me unless I'm being showed my own life experience. And so, who better to talk about it than somebody who's gone through it? So for me, it's information. I let it just be around me, and anything that might come to me is, again, connected to that object because I've got all of my clairs working. If they come in, up, there's a clairvoyant because I was seeing things, in this case, in the forest or wherever they were. Plus, I was feeling things, the tactile sense of the roughness of the bark. And I was seeing things with their action and outcome of the action with that gun. In this case, it could have been nothing happened at all. And then they were able to go, well, you're Joe Schmo. You don't know nothing about us. Yet that's pretty much exactly how it happened. I'm like, okay, good. So, there you go. So I'm just very calm, but I always want to do the best I can with as many clairs. That's why we want to start off with just a couple so that you can get the day-to-day practicality of working with these. It's not always easy to meditate and use your clairs without physical interaction.
Well, I think it's interesting, when we think about psychometry reading as when you're looking at improving your psychic abilities and using psychometry as a means to help with that, like you said, you can get a skin vision sensation, a clairtangency, but it's in tandem and supported by also the clairvoyance that you're using in those moments. So we have a lot of our senses will work together like they do in our world here. We work with all of our senses to navigate our physical world. And even this is true for, the metaphysical world too. Your senses will work together. So we don't want to not allow these other senses to emerge when we're practicing. We want to allow the other senses to emerge with it. So if we do have something that gets ignited skin vision wise, if we ask our master guide to place something in our hands, we might also see something. We might also taste, hear, feel something. And so when that happens, and maybe you have a vision before you actually feel it in your hands, just wait for a moment. Say, can I feel this in my hands? Whatever this vision might be, because you can work with some of your stronger clairs might be clairvoyant. And then you can get more information when that skin vision or that clairtangency actually settles in.
And as Mag is sharing, though, but also knowing what that vibration is, how it does feel on the bark of a tree, or the smoothness of a steel pole, or whatever the case is. Getting, for me, touching those physical objects in my day-to-day conscious awareness gave me the ability to go, okay, now I'm touching that, so I know how that feels. So then I would take my hand away and I would imagine myself or do my clairs and see if I could feel the similar thing that I just touched. And now I started vibing not only the physical touch, but the metaphysical integration from that touch. It literally became vibrations and feelings of information that were directly connected to that particular style, stroke, experience dynamic. And again, just keeping everything practical. You don't have to go crazy and do everything all at once. For me, that's why in my day-to-day living, circumstances that happen or food that I'm enjoying, I will taste, I feel, and I taste how that tastes. Plus, I entrain how that particular piece of meal or whatever it is tasted and vibed in my mouth. So that now, if I'm doing a reading and I've got a circumstance, there's a potential that I could also be picking up something that that person was ingesting in a way of a dinner or something else that they were enjoying. Plus, not only could it tie into the ability to know when somebody's eating something, but sometimes translating into something that they ingest, like a pill or some other liquid or whatever the case is. And sometimes those very subtle feelings are the catalyst that got that person to the other side.
When you are in training it, do you say something to yourself like, "Ooh, remember what this tastes like?" Or do you say, "Hey, Chi, hey, Master Guide, will you help me and train this in my Rolodex of information?" Do you say anything to yourself, or is it just kind of like a instant thought?
Yeah, very good. And it's an instant thought for me because I've been doing it enough. But in addition, as Mag was sharing, bring that master guide in as well, or your higher self, or whoever you want to. But I also found that when I would touch an object, in this case for skin vision or taste or hear or whatever the case is, then it was easier for me to ask Chi, my master guide in this case, to let me feel this, let me hear that, let me see this. And I'd be able to be shown something in my mind, but also have information because I had physically interacted with that piece of material or person or experience or whatever the case is. Now I've got that vibration of energy that not only am I feeling it metaphysically, I have a placement to see if it feels physically connected as well. Because sometimes, there's an anger feeling. Yeah, but that's not what this person was acting on. They were acting on something else besides anger. Isn't it weird? It's a circumstance, yet it was my own way of reading. Go up. It's not an angry vibration. It's not. I just don't get that. What I do feel, and those who know me know, I always feel things. I don't think anything. But what I do feel about this person was this piece of information and that circumstance. And they'd be like, yeah, that's right. And they did ingest this in order to see things differently for that. I'm like, okay, cool, because I wasn't really sure about all of the little details, but we got the solid details of ingestion and things like that that got, in this case, the person to see things differently. And in this case, it was their heart medicine. Because they weren't using it. And it was like, yeah, I'm not a doctor, cannot diagnose nothing. But having some information and in my own physiological body, in this case, I've had, if you've had a pain or hopefully feeling great or whatever the case is, I'll entrain how that feels so that I can just let it go. And now it's in my Solodex. So if I'm in an experience, then I can pull from that Solodex. It's not like everything's saturating me and I can't even see or feel or hear. So it's within that case that the more tactile senses, the more that I will just be in the moment, like being at the beach. I just entrain it. I don't necessarily anymore go, I'm putting this into my Solodex of information. I know every experience I have that I entrain how it feels the best that I can so that it's brought up to my conscious awareness if I'm doing a reading for people and there's something along those lines that piece of information can give them more information or insight.
And the question we always get is, when do you know that it isn't just your imagination and that it's a piece of information from a memory to help you do a reading?
That's when you get other people that you don't know so that you can get more solid validation to go, it's a clean read. You don't know nothing, but having the guts to have blind faith with what you receive. Because, like I said, I could receive all I want, but if I'm not trusting it or I don't say anything, what? The ability to, if I feel or hear or see something, I've got enough strength to go, okay, when it's that strong, it's usually this. And I'll say it because I've had enough guts to do that kind of connection as well. And a lot of times that's why I always say the random, oddball, crazy validations that are so random and oddball, yet accurate to go, that's crazy.
One of the ways that I've been working with training my skin vision is actually through the psychic evolution training cards. And you don't need the training cards, but there is a section in the training cards of elements and there's animals and there's other things. So a lot of times I will put my hand over that and ask my master guide to just have me feel something on my skin. So it's just a training exercise. And then, doing the cards randomly, not knowing which card you're going to do, but okay, what do I feel? When the water came up, I remember my hand felt very buoyant, like it was on the top of water. And now when I think of water, I get this buoyant type of feeling, a skin vision feeling in my hand. And it's because of working with those cards and training, it was a way for me to always know, okay, when I feel that way, then usually it's going to be water versus maybe fire or wood or air or whatever the element might be. And so that's one of the ways that I've been actually consciously working with the skin vision to help improve my ability to sense that and to read that type of energy. So it has been effective. I've been doing once in a while I'll do a reading and then I'll have that sensation in my hand. I'll be like, okay, we have to go to water somewhere. I don't know where we're going to go with this, but this is where we're going. Keep in mind, it's a building thing and it just kind of builds into how you're going to read for people. Because randomly, the way that you train is also how they will work with you when you're doing readings as well to get that information up and out of your mouth if you need to share it or share something about it too.
And not only that, look at what you're saying is you're having fun with this. It's not having to be the serious. It's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to put that into my solar deck. So let's see how this feels. And there's the buoyancy of water. And now I've got that reference. When it feels like this, it's usually water. It feels like this. There was a thing that I was touching with the fan and it was the wind. Okay, so it feels like that. It's usually the wind. So they'll be able to give you a variety of different pieces of information just from that one texture or feeling that you've gotten.
A very interesting one is I felt like a bird feather on my hand. And I was like, oh, and the question wasn't about birds in any way. It was something about the potential of an upcoming project. And I was like, this feels like it's going to help you take flight. So that was my sensation of skin vision, which helped me go to the place of like, I'm getting this taking flight. And then clairvoyantly, I'm seeing something like lift off, like a bird, like launching from a pedestal and being able to fly, being able to soar. And so, using those things in combination in a reading, but my first sense was obviously that I felt that feather in my hand. And if you've ever felt the feather of a bird, I've never felt anything quite exactly like that. And that's why skin vision can be so activating when we're doing readings, because it can lead you into a vision, or you might have the vision with the bird in addition to this as confirmation that you're on the right track. And so we can work with these metaphysical senses to get confirmation around the other ones as well. So kind of be open. And if you are familiar with the psychic evolution training cards, there are different categories to work with different types of psychic development, but you don't need the psychic evolution cards. You can just work with it in your everyday life. You can build your own set of cards, or you could just take pictures out of a magazine that represent different things and then train with those by, putting them upside down and putting your hand over it and doing a psychometry read. Get creative with your psychic development, because this is one of the things that we encourage people to kind of explore and to look at, so that skin vision can become really, really important as either a foundational piece, an activation in a reading, or help confirm things that you're seeing or feeling inside.
But notice you're also getting that validation. It was a feather. It could have meant anything. Yet in your mind, it touched to go, oh, I feel like things are taking off, or they're getting a bird's eye view, depending on how you're viewing it. And that's one feather. But yet look at the information that goes with that one feather. It wasn't about a bird being connected. It was about that person, whoever it might have been connected to, that's starting to take off in their own life experience or direction or whatever the dynamic is. And Maggie may not have understood that, but her reference was the feather, and it started taking her in a direction that apparently was the correct direction because it was adding on a layer of information at a time. It wasn't the feather and then it showed a bird and then flying. Possibly she was getting other visuals with that, not just connected to a bird.
Yeah. So this is one of the ways that, we can start working with it. We could even set up some rules and parameters with our master guide and say, hey, master guide, every time I skin vision a feather, I'm going to think someone's taking flight. So that's going to be my rules or regs. I haven't done that specifically. I'd like to be a little bit more loosey-goosey and flowy with my readings. But if you want that clarity, that could become a rule or regulation for your master guide to work with you and give you correct information when you're doing a reading. So just kind of be aware that when you hit on something that works, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, that worked. Then you can make it part of your rules and regulations, and then your spiritual team will work through those rules and regulations. So you'll only feel that if you've set a rule to only feel it in certain circumstances. Now, that's entirely between you and your spiritual team, how you want to set up your rules and regulations. But realize you can have lots of rules or you don't have to have a lot of rules. It's really up to you.
And notice the dynamic of what she's sharing about the feather is, in this case, it was things are taking off for the person. Plus, if I'm doing a psychic medium read for somebody and they show me a feather, in this case, it's a literal feather validation. And I know the difference for me when they show me that, even though it could have been someone else taking flight. In this case, the way I was reading, it wasn't about the flight in that way. It was about the gift from the other side being leaving a feather here for us to find. And that kind of a connection is the one feather, but it had a variety of different meanings to it. They'll, if it's mediumship, the other side, their loved ones, will do the best they can to give you as much information as possible so that it's not guesswork and it's so open ended they have no way to do it. Oh, yeah. Plus, we can have our guides, just like Mag was saying, is work with us in that capacity. Give me the versatility to understand one feather that could have a variety of different meanings, or whatever the case is. That way, you've got many different references, and sometimes they'll show you that and, like, oh, as a matter of fact, that was connected to a person and they did take flight. Not only that, they literally named their plane Bird's Eye View. And you're like, oh, great, cool. I didn't have a clue. But it's that one feather that gave that person that you were reading for the solid validation of if even a place is in their life, they'll say it. It's not about you to find a place. You just to give that information. If they connect with it, great. If not, great. But it's those kinds of abilities that the person you're reading for usually has an idea about their own life experience. So they'll be able to know if something places in that area or that circumstance or not.
That's a great example of if I had set a rule and reg that was very tight, then maybe I wouldn't receive an image or a sensation of a feather as a mediumship validation. Maybe I would close that off potentially if my rules are too strict. Right. And they would have to like try to get it to me in a different way. So, this is one of the reasons that, your rules and regs that you set up, they're very important so that you don't want them to be too constrictive, so information is just pigeonholed into a certain box, unless that's the way you like to do readings. But if you always say, if I feel a feather in my hand, it means that someone's going to take flight. What if in mediumship reading, they put a feather in your hands like this is going to be a feather, as a validation? And of course, they can introduce that with a different type of energy frequency behind it to get you there, to get you to see what that is. But again, these are all in your rules and regulations when you set them up. We don't teach you specifically how to set up rules and regulations to the T. We want you to work with them because you're working with your spiritual team, you're working with your guides, and they're the ones that have to communicate to you or through you in a way that's comfortable, that you're comfortable receiving that information as well.
And knowing what your Rolodex of information is to work with, because your guides will always do the best they can to set you up for success, not failure, or they wouldn't be a guide. So in this case, the more tools and techniques, the more that you connect with your team and yourself, of course, with these different clairs, the more effective you can become at reading circumstances, experiences, and people, because you're now building upon that Rolodex of what, in this case, like a feather, could have many different meanings. And for myself, because the other side knows my rules and regs, if you're going to show me a feather, give me information in connection with that so that I have a way of what I'm supposed to say or possibly how I'm supposed to say it. Because otherwise, for me, it could be a feather, and then, like Mag is, oh, I'm being shown they're taking off into a whole new direction, and that's a plane. And so you'd probably say, oh, well, in this case, that feather might mean this, because there's many different reasons or outcomes that feather could fit. You don't have to understand it, just comprehend it in a way that just the facts, just the information. And a lot of times, if it's something that has been connected, like something that you've done in your life experience, they'll show you your own life experience and say, talk about it. Like, okay, here's what I'm supposed to say. And again, a lot of people have their own awareness of where some information might fit into life experience to go, as a matter of fact, I do understand that. And here's what it is, and here's where it's placed. And you'd be like, oh, great, because I didn't have a clue. But for me, it's those pieces of information that on all of these readings, I roll into my Rolodex as an eternal being. I want that library of information that I can work with the best that I can. So above all, have fun in working and developing your psychic abilities. I found that the more fun I enjoyed these experiences, the more I was willing to open up to do them. To me, if it got really serious, it's not easy to go, yeah, let's go work with that serious energy. I'll keep it the way that I feel like I want it to be and then work from there. because this is a great blessing in every way. Why would I not learn to refine and define myself in my rules and regs of helping other people? Because as much as I help others, I make sure I help myself as well.
So, if you want more instruction on how to work with some of these things, we do have our Psychic Evolution Mystery School and one of our memberships. It's $25 a month. You can sign up, you can binge watch. We do have a really good library of building out your spiritual room so that you can start really fine tuning and working with these senses with your guides and your master guide. And then also classes on working with the psychic evolution training cards, psychometry, you name it. There's a whole bunch of classes that you can watch there. So check it out. Visit psychicevolution.net and you'll find all the information on there when you just click on Become a Member.
And we're having fun with you and ourselves in our psychic evolution.
So open up the palms of your hands. Ask your master guide to place a beautiful, beautiful heart-shaped stone in your hands. See if you can feel the shape of that heart, the unconditional love, and take care. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. We are so grateful that you have taken the time to spend with us on our podcast today. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
And remember, these abilities are so natural, they're supernatural.
And if you want to have more fun with your psychic evolution, we do have a mystery school. Check it out. There'll be a link in your show notes, and you can join us and indulge in all our classes and become a part of the Psychic Evolution Inner Eye family. And if you feel like this podcast can help someone, please share it with a friend if you feel like it could help them grow and expand in their psychic evolution.
Until next time, have fun with your psychic evolution.